takes us to the CPE standards. What in particular jumped out here? Any new ideas that our clients need to think about?
Yep. So the main new concept is, again, looking at consumer diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure you have a process to promote that. So that'll be probably a big change if you've never done that before. And then there's also a new concept that was added back. I believe this was in previous versions, but the concept for reviewing marketing materials and having safeguards against misrepresentation. So if you haven't done that in a while, it wasn't in the 4.0 standards, you'll have to have a process for that again.
Yeah, that's a very, very old concept. It goes back to the very earliest URAC standards. It was a little surprising that that's kind of re-added back in.
Yep. And then a few things have been removed from the CPE section. With the standard talking about the senior clinical staff person, specifically, they're no longer required to ensure that the qualified clinicians are accountable to the organizations for decisions affecting consumers. So just a minor detail. I mean, they're probably still doing that, but it's just not spelled out in the URAC guide any longer.
That was always kind of a puzzling one to many of our clients. Like, well, what does that mean? We were often asked, and you know, in a nutshell, it was basically the way URAC interpreted it, the reviewers interpreted it was if the chief clinician is not directly involved in the hiring, which is one way to do it, then they had to at least be involved in the design of the qualifications for the clinicians to make sure that those qualifications made sure that the clinicians were appropriately qualified. But once URAC loosened the requirement to that, so that it was kind of that minimal involvement of being involved in the design of the qualifications, then I think it lost a lot of its potential meat, and so it's not a huge change by any means.
Right.
Certainly.
Right. One other detail for the consumer safety protocol. So this would be when you're responding to, on an urgent basis, situations that pose an immediate threat to the health and safety of the consumer. Some of the detail has been removed from the interpretive information. So in the 4.0 standard, you had to have a process to respond to medical and device recalls and fraudulent medications. So those specific details have been removed from that standard.
Great, great. Anything else in the CPE section, or is that pretty much
a couple other small ones here? One concept has been removed for identifying the designated authority for monitoring unethical healthcare practices and collection and review of these. And then also the concept has been removed for the prohibition of financial incentives.
This is a little surprising to me. The financial incentives standard has been around in URAC standards of all flavors for a very long time. And so I found it a little surprising that that's removed, but apparently that's not a big issue for specialty or mail service pharmacies that is distinct from retail. And that's one of the themes you've seen, is that a lot of what URAC has pared back is kind of assumed for pharmacies generally, as you put it, I think, Pharmacy 101. Is that kind of your take on some of these changes?
Sure. Yeah, a lot of these changes, and the ones we'll see in the pharmacy operations section as well, are things that pharmacies should be doing already. Even it's the most basic process for retail pharmacies. So I think a lot of these are not saying you don't need to do them. It's like most pharmacies are just doing it anyway, so we just don't need to spell it out and review it as a part of the URAC standards.